Okay, hi. So I'm going to open up Photoshop and show you about selecting part of an image in Photoshop. So since last time I didn't do this, I wanted to go in and show you how it looks when it opens up for you. So I just went over to my window and go up to where it says Photoshop, and I select that, and some beautiful image is going to come up, and it's going to start opening for me. I'm going to hide this and click on this. And even though it's nice to see me, at some point I might click away from this, but you can see that when we open it up, it's right now telling me that these are things that I recently had open. Um, it's going to offer me a chance to go to a tutorial. And then up at the top, I've got File, and I can click on New or Open if I want to generate something myself. Then I would go to New. But if I want to open an image that's already on my computer, um, I could do it by clicking on Open. And if you have installed Bridge, and I might do another video about Bridge, you can open something from Bridge. Adobe Bridge is kind of like an online portfolio, which is nice when you're jumping between different Adobe programs because it'll build in a little link right on your screen and you won't have to go up to File to open up things. Um, but for today, I'm just going to open, say, this drawing. So if I double click on that, it will open for me. No, no, it won't. Sorry. There it is. Okay. So it is now open, and we already talked about the workspace. You'll notice that in this video, when I open up, it's my toolbar is already set up though with the two columns. Photoshop has a memory, and it's going to restore what you were doing the last time you were on Photoshop the next time that you open it up, which can be very convenient if there are things that you're doing all the time. But if you make mistakes, it can be maddening, because if you did something that you don't like, and you think, oh, I'll just close Photoshop and reopen it, and then you go back to open it and it's like, oh, it's still that way. It can be very, very, very frustrating for you. So you can see that my foreground color now is blue because that's the way it was when I set it up last time. It's picking the crop tool because that's what I did last time. And it's already starting to apply that. So again, if I go up to File, or Edit, or if I go to something like Select, it's not going to give me any options. And this is where a lot of beginners get really frustrated. But you see, as soon as I click into this outside black workspace, the crop tool is now not applied to this drawing anymore. And then if I go back up now to select, you can see that I've got some options here that are now not grayed out, but that are available to me. In terms of changing that color, I got a couple options. I showed you in the last video that if I just click on this, my color picker is going to come up. But I also have this little icon down here that if I hover over it, it'll tell you, and it'll say default foreground and background colors. And I'll click on that, and now I'm back to black and white. So I don't have to go about trying to pick perfect black in order to get back to my default colors there. But today we want to go and talk about selecting. So again, it thinks that I want to crop this image. So it's got these little brackets around the corners. And if I wanted to make a change, I would grab those and drag those one way or another. And then if I click outside of that, it will apply that, or if I double click, or if I hit enter on my keyboard. But I don't want to crop this guy. I want it just the way it is. It's snapping to it, you can see. Um, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a couple of different ways that we can select within this image. Okay? Now, I'm going to explain to you a couple of ways of doing it, but what you will find in Photoshop is that anything you want to do, you can probably do it 5 or 6 different ways. So while these ways of selecting something are ways that I've used over and over and over again, there are other ways, and depending on what kind of selection you want to do, there are probably better ways of doing things. The old-fashioned way of selecting something, so let's say I wanted to pick out this figure and do something to him, would be to select what's called the lasso tool. And a nice feature that they put in last year or maybe the year before is that you kind of have this little quick tutorial, that shows you what the tool does when you hover over it, which is kind of a nice sort of learning thing for you. But you basically, you probably used this before, you click and drag and it draws a line where your cursor is. And when you come back and connect the line, it turns into this little, what's called marching ants. Anything that's inside of the marching ants is selected, and anything that's outside of the marching ants is not selected. So at this point, I have the figure, but I also have a lot of the background area selected as well. If I want to see what's selected a different way, I told you that I like this little quick edit mask mode, and it's got a screen with a little circle dotted line in there. So that's our computer screen, and our selection, the dotted line, is the marching ants. If I click on it though, what you'll notice is everything that isn't selected goes pink, and everything that is selected stays the color that it was. Sometimes people will click on this thinking like it's a camera or something like that, or just by accident, and their screen, they're trying to do stuff and things aren't working. And if you ever see this pink color or a pink haze, and you see that this is in black and white instead of as a line drawing, then you know that you've gone into quick edit mask mode. Masks we'll talk about on another day after we talk about layers. But certain things that you want to do in Photoshop won't work until you go out of this mode, which is as simple as clicking on it again, and then you got your marching ants back. Okay? If I click in that mask mode, though, what's the advantage of it? Well, I can use some of these tools like the eraser tool and a brush tool to expand my selection or retreat my selection. So let's say I want to expand my selection. I want to select a little bit more, or I want to get a little closer to the figure. If I click on my brush tool up at the top, where I've got this little workspace, you've got all these attributes to your brush. It tells us that one, it is the brush, and that I haven't set up any presets here because I just downloaded Photoshop this year. It tells me that my brush is 13 pixels wide, and it also tells me that it's a very soft brush. So the edge of my brush is going to fade out. It's not going to have a hard edge to it. I can change that by using this little slider and go up to 100%. And I can make my brush bigger or smaller by sliding this as well. You'll also notice that we've got a whole inventory here of pre-made brushes. So general brushes, dry brushes, wet brushes, special effects brushes, that sort of thing. And there, in fact, is also a settings tab here. I'm not sure what this one is, but for today, we're just going to make our brush a little bit bigger and a little harder edge. So now that I've got that, I can click, and you can see where I drag, that pink moves with me, so I can get a little closer to my selection in this mode. I don't have to be using the mouse the same way. I can kind of come in and sort of like get the edge of this closer to the figure, right? And then if I want to get in tighter spaces, I can move the size of it down, and I can come in and I can get into little smaller spaces here. And then when I click out of this mode, now you can see my selection has gotten a little tighter to the figure. Okay? Let's go back into that mode one more time and see what the eraser does. So let's say I want to come in and clean up some of the stuff where I went over, like down here on his leg. I've got this little teeny eraser. It's back to that 13 because it's been set that way as a preset. And then once I come in and start changing the size of this, it'll get a little bit bigger so we can see a little bit more. And you'll find that each time, again, it's going to remember what you've got. So I've got a little bit bigger brush, just make that just a little bit smaller. So I can come back in here now, and where I've gone over, I can come back, and with my eraser, I can go back and eliminate. So getting this figure selected with the old-fashioned lasso tool and the quick mask mode is just a matter of patience. The longer I spend doing this, the more accurate I can be. However, there are other ways of selecting things as well. What I also want to show you right now is that while I'm doing this, I could come down here and use my zoom tool, which allows me to click in and zoom in so that I can get closer, so that I can really see where I've made my mistakes and where I need to make corrections and where I don't want to. And I can also do that with my keyboard just by clicking on Control and plus, it goes in, and Control and minus, it goes back out, which helps you see where your selection is at. But let's click out of that mode. Okay? We've got our marching ants back now, and let's go up to our select tab and see some other possibilities here. So under select, it's got select all, deselect, select inverse. So now that I've got something selected, I could decide to reverse it and click on inverse. Okay? But I'm going to click on deselect so that we can try a different tool. What I want to show you is that underneath the lasso tool, if I right click on that, we've got the lasso tool, the polygonic lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. All right. So if I click on the magnetic lasso tool, then I can go around this figure and click periodically. And if we zoom in, what you'll see is that that lasso tool is trying to find the edge for me. It helps me if I click every once in a while and create an anchor point, but I don't even really need to. And so I can kind of carefully go around, or I can go around kind of fast. And it's going to look for edges. And then when I get to the end, I want to click on that first anchor point again. And now I've got that selection, which is a little bit closer than the general lasso tool was. The polygonic lasso tool is straight lines. And if your lasso tool starts going all over the place, double click outside of the image and it'll go away. Okay? If you double click and it goes away and you didn't want it to go away and now you're frustrated again, one thing that you will find very helpful in Photoshop is up here underneath where it says edit, it says undo, and it says undo, in this case, deselect. And it's Control Z. There is your shortcut that I use more often than I thought to. And you can see it's got redo and toggle to last state. It used to be like called step back, but new version, toggle to last state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click undo, and I've got my selection back when I make a mistake. And Control Z, they're right next to each other on the keyboard. You'll probably use that a lot in there. Okay, so that's a second way of selecting. Um, we also have the quick selection tool hidden underneath one of our tools in here. Um, I thought it was going to be there, but let's see where it would be. Is it under our brush tool? Oh, let's just go here. Oh, great, I lost it now. Control Z. Oh, I have to accept that selection. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna deselect that by clicking outside of it, right? And we've got our magic mixer brush tool. That's a fun one, but that's not the one I want. No, it's not there either. Magnetic. Here it is. Okay, so they've moved it in the new version. So the quick selection tool or the magic wand tool, these look kind of like the magnetic lasso tool did, but they sort of look in a different way. So let's use the quick selection tool, and then we'll just do one more thing. And what it's going to do is it's going to kind of like scan the image for us, and it's going to try to find information where it can see edges of things. And what I would do in this case is I'd look up here at the top, and it's telling me what it is, okay? And then it's got a little selection, and then it's got this little plus over here too. So what we can do is we can go in and we can click and drag, and when we click and drag, it starts to look for the edges of things and come up with what it thinks would logically be what I wanted to select. But you can see, especially if I go into quick mode, right? It's not perfect, right? It got the background over here, but it got, a pretty good edge on this side. But the nice thing is that it also has this minus feature, so I can start outside of it and I can push it. Oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong one. The minus feature here. So I can start outside of it, and now if you look at my little quick selection tool, it's got a minus, so I can start outside and I can push it back in. So I can go between the plus and the minus to add to a selection quickly, or minus and get rid of a selection. Kind of push it back towards the figure. Okay. So all of those things are sort of helpful, and you should try even the ones that I haven't talked about yet. But I want to show you one last one. So I'm going to go back up to select. I'm going to go select, deselect. Okay, so now nothing is selected. And I'm going to show you on this drop down that we also have select by color range. Okay. Now that is a great tool for what we're doing right now, right? Like let's say we want to use Photoshop to do our skeleton drawing, the second version of our skeleton drawing. If I click on color range, I'm going to get this interactive palette, and you can see right now it's selected some stuff based on the black and white relationships that are here. So if I were to use my zoom tool, or to go control plus plus plus, so I can get in there, I can click on a black area with my colored dropper, and you can see what it selects over here is a little bit different, right? Now we've got some different uh, uh, um, tools within this interactive palette. This fuzziness thing is like, how exact do you want this to be? Do you want it to be only that color, or things that are kind of close to that color? So you can drag that this way and that way to get more or less of the drawing. And see how this white area has started to expand as I move this back and forth in here. Right now I don't have a range set up. But I could. It's a tool that I don't know very much about. We'll have to figure that one out together. So I just added a whole bunch, and I click OK. And now look at what it's done. It's selected all that stuff. If I go into my quick mask mode, I can see that most of it is not selected. Only the black lines are selected in there, right? So if I do something like now, say, go up to edit, and I decide to cut out those lines, boom, they're going to disappear from the image itself. And everything, if I zoom out, goes white. Why is that helpful? Well, if I started a new file, new, it's going to ask me, how big do I want it to be? I say just that big because it's going based on what I just cut out. I say create. I got a blank sheet of paper here. I go back up, edit, paste, Control V, boom. There's my drawing without any of the background there. I could put this drawing on top of any other image that I want to. I'm going to stop there so that this video doesn't get too long. And we'll talk about how we can use that and how to make special brushes in the next video. So stop sharing.